Hi guys, welcome to Heal and Learn. This is Zorina. Today I'm welcoming a dear friend of mine, somebody who we haven't had on the channel for almost a year, maybe 6 months, I don't know, but it's been a long time. Hydrogen Man, Greg Hydrogen Man. Hi, Greg, welcome.
Thank you, Zarina. It's always a pleasure to see you. It's been a while since we've been able to talk. I think we've both been quite busy, but I'm glad we were able to have a little sit down and hang out.
Yeah, very cool to have you. We in the pre-talk that we had, it's like there's so many subjects and so many topics that we could talk about. And your specialty is health, but health is linked to spirituality. So health, spirituality, basically well-being.
Yeah.
Where do we start? Where do we start, Greg?
Well,
We
it's
start from
funny.
the basis of life, water.
The basis of all. Here we go. I will say this. I think that there's a lot of people who disagree about things about health. Some people will say, you should drink alkaline water. Some people say you should eat nothing but meat. No, you should eat nothing but fruit. You should be a fruitarian. No, you should do nothing but breathe. The breatharians, and
Yeah.
there's so many different perspectives and views on health and the way we should live. One thing that I try to do in my practice and everything that I've been learning is try to distill it down to simpler things that everybody can agree on. And my personal opinion on water, with all the disagreements out there, and it took years of research, is I kind of came to the point where I was like, you know what? I don't care what the pH is, because I could have tap water that we know clearly is super dirty, and it could be the perfect pH, but that's still not going to be the best water for us, in my personal opinion. And I should say before we begin, I don't give any medical advice. I don't make any medical claims. There's no claims for or against any product or products. Okay, all that out of the way. Anyway, so what I ultimately, my conclusion is, one, I thought I just want the cleanest water. And when I say the cleanest water, I mean, I just don't want anything in it as far as chemicals, radioactive waste, all sorts of garbage that's in our waters or potentially in your water. That was the first thing. I didn't care about the pH or anything else. And interestingly enough, I discovered that that's actually how nature does it. The way that I discovered is the way that nature does it. And I've learned so much by observing nature. On the spiritual front, not religion, I want this to be clear, but there's ancient scriptures that have a lot of beautiful knowledge. And one of them has to do with what we call the hydrologic system, which is how nature, because remember, the ancient scripture said that God created the heavens and the earth. So some higher being, whatever God you believe in, whatever, he created the earth and the nature of things in earth. And when I observe planet Earth and how it cleans water, ironically, it all starts with hydrogen, because it all starts with the sun, which is pretty much made of entirely hydrogen. Some people might say, well, it's also made of helium. Guess what? Helium is just a form of hydrogen, still hydrogen. And it hits the ocean, and the water begins to, by getting hot, almost like going through hell, because hell is always supposed to be hot and fire. It actually purifies the water because the water begins to rise. It literally begins to ascend. The ascension process of water is what purifies it. And we all know the ancient stories within ancient scriptures about ascension. Jesus ascended, Moses, Elijah, Melchizedek, all these people, very spiritual people. And the beautiful thing about water is, through this ascension process, there's virtually nothing that it cannot purify. That's how amazing it is. I don't care how dirty you get water, there's always a way to purify it. And so what I did when I started researching how to purify water, I realized that all these water filters we use are not the right way. They're what's called porous systems, and the filter themselves gets dirty, and they actually start building up bacteria. I actually have a chart here because I am a water nut, as you well know. And I can show you here. Here's just some of the stuff that we need to clean out of water. So let's say we got radioactive contaminants, inorganic contaminants, biological contaminants, and even organic contaminants like herbicides, pesticides, all this stuff. But here's the interesting one. And you should see how much water affects our health. But this is an interesting one right here. So when you use the power of the hydrologic system, which is the way nature does it, this blue line is a system that I use to clean water, and it makes the water the same every single time. The red line is porous systems, so like reverse osmosis, carbon filters. With time, the quality of the water is actually going down because the filters get dirty.
Oh, then you have to replace them though.
That's right. But here's the problem. Let's say you get a filter system that says you can filter out 5,000 gallons, right? Even just after 500 gallons, the quality of the water has already gone down.
Yeah.
And the next 500 and the next 500. By the time you reach 5,000, your water's so dirty. And so it really does make a huge difference. And on top of it, here's a picture of a porous system, you know, when water goes through a filter. But regardless of that, when you start looking at the contaminants that it can and cannot filter out, there's so many things that it cannot filter out. And there's also so many unknowns in our water, like pharmaceuticals, for example. When you use the power of the hydrologic system, so the system that I use, if people want to check it out, I don't think they can buy it in your country, but in America, it's called mypurewater.com. That's the name of the website that what I use. And I only share what I actually use. I don't try to promote a ton of products or sell a bunch of stuff. It's mypurewater.com.
Filter, the filtration system, or about the distillation system?
So the carbon distillation system is the filter system. That's how you clean the water. And I won't go through all the pages. There's pages of chemicals in the water. I mean, there's so much stuff. I can just show you one page here. I mean, look at all these chemicals. And here's one of the most deadly ones, PFAS. PFAS is so deadly to the human system. We know it causes cancer, even in the smallest numbers. Even toxicologists can't give you a safe number. And this is the numbers in the water when it was tested. And then after it goes through the carbon distiller, look, everything's a zero. It eliminates everything, called zeros. And there's pages upon pages of these chemicals. And so this was all third-party lab tested. So anyway.
So where was the water taken from? Does it say in this brochure?
It was just tap water. Yeah, it was just that's how bad our tap in the US. Yes. Yeah. This is an American company, American product. And yeah, and I like these guys. I mean, you know, I always do my homework and try to pick the best products for myself. I'm literally just like, I want to do it for me. But then since I did all the homework, I share it with everybody else. And so, and there is a discount code if for some reason people want it. It's Uprising 144K, which is the name of my YouTube channel. And it helps the channel a little bit. It's not a lot, but it helps. But more than anything, when the companies see that people are using my code, the company's more apt to be nicer to me. Like if I make a request, like, hey, can you guys do a lab test? I'll be like, oh, sure. You know, people are using your code. So we'll do stuff like that to help support and show what their systems can do. But anyway, the important part is clean water. And then, of course, you'd be surprised how much water, now, regardless of the diet that you have. See, this is the part that's interesting. Regardless of the diet you have, regardless of what you believe about health, I think we can all agree on clean water is essential. I mean, I just think that that's, you know, something we can agree on. And then beyond that, then we get into hydrogen. I mean, now we're making the water practically like, some people call it holy water, you know, sacred water, healing water. There's a place, as you know, the place in France, Lourdes, France.
Before we go into the hydrogen, Greg,
Sure,
can we talk a little bit about the contaminants in baby food? Because this is what you wanted to, this was a particular concern to you, the effects of all these water contaminants, because of course, people are making baby milk when they use powder, when they use formula.
Yeah, that's a really good point, because who is going to be affected the most by contaminants in our water? And of course, from everything that I've researched, and I'll pull up the data here, it's going to be children, you know, little babies, infants, mostly because their immune systems and just their bodies in general are not fully developed. And so
don't they normally do they prepare the formulas with baby water or with mineral water?
Yeah, that's the thing. You know, it depends on the people. So some people will literally just use tap water, which to me is absolute insanity to be giving a child tap water with all this stuff in it. I mean, we already have an epidemic right now. I don't know how much you've been watching this, but did you know that basically the youth right now has much lower sperm counts? Are you aware of this?
Yes. I watched something yesterday, 50% decrease or so over time, but that's since the 50s.
Yeah, well, and we developed, the age of chemicals, I believe, started in the 40s. So it's interesting that you mentioned the 50s. It all seems to coincide, and
Yeah.
it just seems to keep
After World War
getting.
II, the interview that I watched stated after World War II it started.
That's right. So there's just so much stuff that I think is affecting the youth, and I mean that's only obviously one example. I mean, it could be, there we know about the risks to cancer, learning disorders. So we were just talking about the brain and not just food, but I think how water affects us, the gastrointestinal system or gastrointestinal illnesses. So many gut issues out there. It's absolutely insane. And just on and on it goes. There's just so much. I just think water is something so important. It's written all over ancient scriptures too, even down to one of my favorite verses where it says that, and the voice of God was like the sound of many waters, is what the scriptural verse says. So even his voice has to do with water. And I obviously find it very, very interesting, but more fascinating is the way that it affects you when you start making these changes in your life.
Mm-hmm. Okay, and so talking about water, we can also shift either to hydrogen or to food. Both are relevant, and let's talk about both of them.
Yeah.
I saw a scan on your, like on the thumbnail of one of your videos, two brain scans. One was
Mm-hmm.
from a person that is eating based on the Mediterranean diet. The other person was, I don't know what they were eating, pizzas maybe.
It was just mostly just junk food,
Junk
processed
food.
food. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And so what were your discoveries?
I was watching this whole thing on neuroscientists and how they were talking about how food can make you literally smarter, as crazy as that may sound, or kind of dumb you down, and how that affects the brain. It's so funny. This is a little bit off subject, but do you know Elon Musk's mother? Have you heard of her?
Yeah, I've seen pictures of her. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And then did you ever hear about how she's like a nutritionist? She's super into her health, eating all the right things, all these different things, right? I
Well,
don't know
the
if you
only
knew
thing
that
I know was
about
she
her.
was a model when she was young.
Oh, okay. Well, apparently she's really into her health. Now, the reason that I found this interesting is she took such good care of herself, and look what happened to her baby. He's a freaking genius, right? And so I thought that was kind of interesting. It's just a small thought. And even though I don't think he takes very good care of himself these days, he's highly stressed. My understanding is that Elon eats a lot of junk food and whatnot. But it's interesting because the beginning of something, like a beginning of a plant, if you have really good soil and you do the right seed and you're giving it water, the beginning is always the most important part. That's why clean water affects children the most. I
Mm-hmm.
think once you're an adult, things are a little different. You could probably abuse yourself a little more, which is not a good thing.
Yeah.
But if you had a really, really strong upbringing and you were super healthy and super strong, whereas people who did not get the right type of upbringing, maybe their mothers smoked or ate junk food and the kids born all screwed up, and that seems to affect them all through life, you know?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And so the beginning just seems extremely important, in my
Well,
opinion, of course.
yeah, I've actually read studies about children who ate sweets or people who ate sweets when they were children. And it turned out that they had, I can't remember if they had a serious disorder, but there was a serious distinction
Oh,
between kids who ate sweets and and the ones who didn't eat sweets when they were children. So it
so
affects
you think
the
it
health.
like anxiety or,
Yeah, could be. I can't remember what exactly they
depression?
had, but definitely some disorder, mental disorder.
I think that's a good point. There was some new data. I haven't even done the video yet. I was going to do this video on my channel. There's some new data that came out of Japan observing how processed sugar, as compared to just normal sugar from like an apple or a banana, like, stuff in nature. Again, we're back to always nature and the way that things are designed.
Yeah.
And processed sugar, whether it's even if it's cane sugar that went through a process or coconut sugar or just plain white processed sugar, whatever it is, high corn fructose corn syrup, all this stuff,
Mm.
how it's actually affecting the hormones in the body. That was kind of surprising. The sugar spike is disrupting our hormones and actually affects us emotionally. So people who have more emotional disorders, and then they also discovered that it's actually appears to make us deficient in certain minerals. It seems to like pull minerals from our body when it's processed sugar. And I found this again very interesting because again, all the way that we're eating or the water we're drinking, how it affects the way we feel. And then you see in America, I mean, violence going up, people just being, very confused too. I hate to say it, but I think there's a lot of people who are just extremely confused. Everybody has all these different belief systems. And the truth is, for me, I feel like it's actually quite simple. I just feel like it's so simple. Even diet, everybody's arguing about diet. And I feel like the answers are just so simple. I mean, really so simple. Even water, they argue about. And I'm like, the answers to me seem so clear and so simple. And so it's pretty bad to see what's happening out there.
The high fructose syrup, was it high fructose syrup? As far as I have researched it, it actually subdues the functioning of the neurotransmitters. And this is the reason why I think it doesn't allow for nutrients to be distributed through the body, and it doesn't allow for the brains of the children to develop properly. And I personally believe that's why they can have some issues when they grow up. It subdues the electrical impulses, the transmission of the electrical impulses in the brain.
That makes a ton of sense to me. And I think that I always like to keep things as simple as possible, but in the end, I think we clearly know it's not good, and especially for children. And it really is sad because I just think, obviously we know children are the future, but I observe that a lot of people just don't seem to care enough, or they just feel like they don't have the time. But you have to like make the time when it comes to your kids. I mean, to me, they're like one of the most important things in life, humans in general, not just children, but humans in general. I heard a funny comedian, this is a terrible subject to bring up, so we probably won't get on it too long, but this hilarious comedian was talking about abortion, and that's a real touchy subject, but it was funny because he said, they care so much about this baby that's not even born. But once he's born, they're like, okay, it's fine. They don't care. They're like, high fructose corn syrup. And it's like, who cares? They only And I found that hilarious. I thought that was actually a really good point. It's like, you care so much up until the point they're born. It's like hilarious to me.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Yeah, it's a good point. How did hydrogen change the way you perceive the world?
The more that I've purified, my water, hydrogen appears to really help purify, and then having the cleanest diet I can have. I was absolutely shocked. I mean, that I did it just because I was extremely sick, and I probably wouldn't even be alive today. But what shocked me, what's been happening, and I haven't actually talked about it. I think this is going to be the first time we really talk about it, where I don't like to use the word psychic because that's kind of a weird word to me, because that's not really what is happening with me. But it's almost like there's these weird intuitions. There's almost things that I just know. I've gotten all these crazy ideas. You and I have talked about, like, I'm not even an engineer, and I got these ideas for a device to build that could, dare I say, make any medical condition just go away, possibly. I'll just say that. And even devices that would change the world of agriculture, which I'm not even into farming. I was talking to this guy. This was pretty remarkable. He really wanted to know some of my protocols. And because his life was, dare I say, kind of a mess. He knows it's a mess. And he's been doing some of this stuff. And he just wrote the most amazing testimonial yesterday. I was thinking about doing a video because he is transforming. I kid you not, before my eyes. It's unbelievable. I mean, just unbelievable. And the changes that he's going through, and they're very positive. And these changes that are happening to him, I'm just like, you know what? He even said it. He said, dude, this is not normal. He said, he thinks it's the hydrogen also. And I think it is too, because hydrogen, what people don't realize is hydrogen, in my opinion, is what connects us all. Like the stars are made of hydrogen. And people, often look to the stars, like people who, it can be the map of the cosmos. It could be, they say it's written in the stars. We talk about the star constellations and even understanding them, which I don't even think we understand a very small piece of the knowledge that is out there. And then, of course, hydrogen is in the water. And then, of course, even the ancient scriptures refer to God, like we were talking about, and not just the sound of water. There's so many things in relationship to these very high spiritual things, and not just water, which is primarily made, by the way, of molecular hydrogen, which is what we're talking about. But also there's verses that I found where they literally are referring to hydrogen as the spirit of God himself. And it literally, we were talking about ascension of the water, remember? Well, hydrogen is the ascending molecule. It ascends higher than anything can. And it's interesting because the relationship between water and hydrogen, when you separate them, remember, hydrogen ascends, but oxygen, which is the other component of water, you got H2O. H2 is molecular hydrogen, O is oxygen. Oxygen drops to the ground. It doesn't ascend. You know, and oxygen is the oxidative molecule, which means it's the oxidant, which means it's the death molecule.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what it is. It's death. And it actually burns. So if you have like food grade hydrogen peroxide, which a lot of people don't know, that hydrogen peroxide is actually more to do with oxygen than hydrogen, because it's an additional oxygen molecule, which is why it oxidizes, it kills things, which is good, right? If you get a cut, you put hydrogen peroxide so that you don't get an infection or something of the sort. And so it's a very spiritual component. I didn't think that it would open us up spiritually. I did not, never. In fact, the knowledge that I'm telling you right now about knowing about ascension of the molecules and the way that oxygen and oxidation works and all this is coming from, never read it in a book. This is actually a lot of my own theories. These are not, nobody's ever written about this. This is my stuff. And I believe that it's hydrogen that has actually been giving this to me slowly. I don't know how. It's like taking in hydrogen seems to connect us more, like to the universe, maybe the synapses in the brain. I don't know. All I know is that this knowledge keeps pouring into me. And now, and it has been happening with other people, and now it's happening to this guy. I mean, this guy, it was night and day, Zareen. I really wish people could have seen the difference.
Tell us the story. Where did he start from? What was the cause? What did you advise him to do, and what's happening now?
So basically, and I wish I have his testimonial on my phone. I kind of wish I had it up on the computer. I have a small piece of it, actually. Maybe I can read you part of it. But basically, this kid, I say kid, but I think he's in his early 30s. I don't know if that's a kid, but I think he's a kid, I guess. Really, really nice guy. But he is always let people walk all over him, take advantage of him. He was close to 300 pounds, huge, largely overweight, lots of junk food, not very high self-esteem. I probably shouldn't say a few other things that he shared with me that he probably wouldn't want me to say, even though we don't know who he is, but if it ever comes out. And very sad, very depressed. I believe he was even suicidal, you know, at points in his life. And it's just been really, really rough for him. And he couldn't change. He's like, dude, I just couldn't change. I just wanted to sit there and drink and watch TV and be lazy. And he had no inspiration, you know. And he caught my channel. I don't know how he caught it. Oh, yeah, he said he saw me on the show, you know, kind of like one of your shows. And he started watching me doing my live videos where I make my smoothies. And basically my videos that I do live are literally me just living my life. It's not like they're all staged. And I'm like, hey, watch this, guys. I'm like, I wake up, turn on the camera, and I'm like, hey, guys, I'm going to show you how I clean water. Because people always ask, hey, I want to see how you do it. How do you do it? How do you clean the water? How do you make your breakfast? I want to see it live. And he started joining in on that. And then
I've also joined a few times at the beginning, and I remember watching people commenting, and they're like, dude, you need to buy new scissors for your carrots. Like that.
That's right. Yes, I use scissors for preparing my smoothies, which is probably unusual, but you know, that's what works for me. And I don't even know how I came up with half the stuff I've come up with, to be honest. Like even the smoothies, nobody makes a smoothie like that one that I make. But it's been remarkable. It's not only worked extremely well, the blood work and the doctors who have seen the blood work, or even the doctors who have seen what it does for other people. And then they'll literally tell them, yeah, you know, this guy, Greg, the hydrogen man, I've been following what he's saying. And then I'll have some doctors reach out to me and be like, hey, I want to know what you're doing, because I saw this guy's blood work and he said he's following your protocols and I've never seen his blood look so good. You know, stuff like that. That happens a lot.
You also told me that your doctor was surprised that you were vegan, and she couldn't believe that your blood could be so good. She said you would be deficient, and then you turned out not to be.
Yep. That was I remember that story too. That one was from a few years back too. And yeah, I mean, I eat mostly, fruits, vegetables, nuts, seeds, and beans. Once in a while, I'll have what I call a cheat day where I went out to a restaurant recently and had a little fish, you know, and I had a little octopus, something like that. Once in a while, I'll have eggs too, but well over 90% of the time, I eat, fruits, vegetables, plants, basically. And yeah, the doctor was like, there's just no way that you can be living like this and stay healthy and not be deficient. And then of course she did a massive amount of blood work, just pages, and that's why I went to her. She does some of the best blood work there is, and vials, so many vials. And yeah, like you said, the results came back and she was shocked. In fact, I think I always felt bad because I think she felt, dare I say, humiliated, because the results were exactly the opposite of what she would think. And what she promotes is kind of the opposite of what it is that I do.
Mm-hmm.
She promotes eating a lot of meat, and yet all her patients are deficient in something, and yet I wasn't.
Yeah.
And in fact, I wasn't deficient in anything, which is very unusual. And I
And
think
it's
I
the
figured
China
out.
study. I don't know if we've talked about the China study, the book, and 5,000 people were asked for their diet. And I can't remember what percentage of them had cancer, but the percentage that were vegan and had cancer was minute compared to the other group.
That's right. Yeah, and I've gone, the way that I created my protocols was one off of data. So reading a lot of scientific studies and how they affect the body, but you can't get too caught up in the mechanism part, people, because you could eat nothing but meat for 3 days and it's going to look great for blood glucose. So people can be like, oh, look, your blood sugar is down, all this is looking great. But then you got to look at long-term data and not just one thing. You need to look at the overall picture. And I think that that's always something that I see huge mistakes in the world of health. And like I said, for me, the answers are easy. Anybody who says you shouldn't eat vegetables, to me, is just absolute insanity. It's like, are you kidding me? You're seriously saying don't eat vegetables? I
Like
mean, they
the
have some of the most.
Jordan Peterson's diet, the carnivore, the lion's diet.
Yep.
What do you think of that?
And I like Jordan Peterson.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but, and I would be happy to have a discussion with him, even though I know that he'd probably win an argument because he's really good at debating
Argumentation.
people.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And I'm not a very good debater. I'm really not a good debater. I just, yeah, I'm sorry. I'm not really good at this arguing with people about stuff. And as much as I like Jordan Peterson, and I'm glad that his carnivore thing's working out for him, and I have a feeling I know why it's working out for him, but I definitely don't think that that's the healthiest way to live. And I do think eventually he'll probably do. Look, I'll even say it now, and it's so sad, but I think he'll eventually have a heart attack, or even potentially a stroke. And I think that's eventually, and he's probably going to have kidney issues because an all meat diet in long term, way too much protein, it's actually really hard on the kidneys. And when you eat meat, it's actually clear as day. We know this. Now, scientists supposedly don't know why, but your blood gets flooded with calcium whenever you eat meat.
Mm-hmm.
And so, that's going to
Cheese as
probably put you
well.
at risk. Cheese as well. Oh,
Yeah.
interesting. See, I didn't know
Mm-hmm.
that one. I knew
All
about meat.
milk
Well, that's
products as
interesting.
well. Yeah. So whenever
Really?
you have osteoporosis, doctors advise you to eat a lot of cheese, to eat milk products, but it tends to have the opposite result. Actually,
Yeah,
people
I
who
knew about
eat,
that.
yeah. Mm-hmm.
So that's I mean, it's so interesting. And I think it probably puts you at risk for, kidney stones, gallstones, these type of calcium deposits and whatnot. But you know what? I still like Jordan Peterson. To me, I'm not going to get mad at. Look, here's a funny thing. People argue so much about what someone eats. I'm not going to get mad about what someone eats. I'm going to love the human people, no matter what they eat, even no matter what their quote unquote religion is or their belief systems. As long as we can all be kind to one another, respect one another, just love one another. How can you hate someone just because of what they eat? That always seems very ridiculous to me.
Yeah, I agree. Okay, so let's go back to the story of this young man that started
Oh
using the
yeah.
protocols. Mm-hmm.
So let's just say at this point he is down to about 180 something pounds from almost 300 pounds.
Oh,
So
wow.
he's lost a massive amount of weight.
Mm-hmm.
He has been beginning to change, like the way, like all of a sudden he says he feels more inspired. He feels more like he just feels different. He wants to grow in some way, like spiritually. There's just something that has changed. In fact, let me see this one little piece that he wrote. I have just a part of it. I wish I had the whole thing. But this is what he wrote. And God, I wish I had the whole thing. But he started off by saying, and I always suggest this to people too, by the way, because I'm doing it for kind of research purposes. I always tell people, if you're going to start hydrogen, not only follow the right protocol, right equipment, but also track the dates. So you can measure how long it takes, because people always ask me, how long does it take to get benefits from hydrogen? It's different for everybody. But I can also find some range. And the range is typically 6 to 8 months is where I see a lot of stuff happen. 6 to 8 months.
Okay.
But I've been doing it for years, and I've seen a transformation. Even years later, things are still happening. So this is what he wrote. He said, I wish I knew the exact date I started hydrogen water. This is what he wrote me, because he's starting to see the changes and he doesn't remember how long it's been now.
Yeah.
Right. And then he said, do you remember? And I'm like, I don't remember. I always tell people, you keep track of it. I can't keep track of it for everybody. And then he said, he says, the reason I'm asking is because it's crazy. He wrote, I'm radically the opposite person I once was. And he is. I've been seeing him go through these changes. He said, never in a million years did I ever fathom that this would be possible. He is, because his mother, and nobody knows who these people are, so it's okay. But it sounds like the way his mother raised him wasn't the most healthy way. There's a reason that he's insecure. There's a reason that he's largely overweight. There's a reason that he loves junk food, because these are the things that he was given, as a child,
right,
and all these things, that the way he was raised. And then he went on to say, I feel like I was literally reborn since I've been using hydrogen. And then he writes, I just know it. He can feel that something's happening. But I will say that I think it's subtle. Some people use hydrogen and be like, hey, I don't feel nothing, because it's not like alcohol, where you're going to take, 10 beers and you're clearly going to feel it and something's not right. It's not a drug. You could drink, it's funny, you could drink clean water and you could drink tap water, and somebody might be like, well, I don't even notice a difference. It's all the same. It's just water, but it really is different.
It is
and
different.
For people who
I tried it. I can testify it's different, because I bought such a machine, the machine from, what was the brand called? Greg,
the Lourdes Hydrofix.
The Lourdes Hydrofix, yes. And the water really tastes different. It tastes fresh. It tastes light. I cannot define it otherwise. Light and fresh.
Oh yeah, I guess if people want to know where to get the equipment that I use, they can find it at holyhydrogen.com. What a perfect name too, Holy Hydrogen.
Yeah.
It's kind of like holy and sacred. They really did pick a really great name. And so I don't have the rest of his testimonial written down here. That was how far, that's only that little piece. But he's going through these very transformative changes, and I'll make a video because I do think it's important. And but I've been kind of staying away from the spiritual side of hydrogen, because I feel like when you talk about religion and politics, it tends to divide people, and I don't even mean religion when I talk about spirituality, but people take it that way. They're like, oh, you're talking religion, even though that's not my intention.
But anything can potentially divide people. Food, whether you're vegan, vegetarian, or carnivore, it can also divide people. So, I mean, we can't stop talking. So let's talk.
That's a very good point. Actually, I really appreciate you making that point. And so ultimately, what I wanted for people is, I really want the best for people. I want to, quote unquote, love my neighbor, or as Jesus once said, love one another. He said, as I loved you, and stuff like that. And so what I tried to do was just show people, based on what I did, to help myself heal and rise up. Hence the name of my channel too, Uprising. Uprising. Of course, 144K is that biblical number, but so I just been showing that and sticking more to the facts, like, hey, here's a third-party lab test. Here's the facts. What's the chemicals? What can this remove? What can it not remove? How does that affect children? Just like sticking to facts is really what I really did on my channel. And I think, and then I've been doing my channel for many, many years. And I just think that it's kind of reaching a point where I'm like, you know what? Maybe I need to start touching on these other subjects, like the spiritual aspect of things, because it clearly is impacting people on a spiritual level. It's certainly impacted me on a spiritual level. I just didn't really talk about it because I actually kept doubting myself. I'm like, is this really happening? Like, this can't be happening. This can't be the hydrogen. It can't be the clean water. No way. But I really think it is. I really think it is. And it is impacting me more and more as time goes by. And so